Hi, Tove here at Klevgrand. I'm here to talk to you about Skaka, our shaker percussion plugin. Skaka is a sample-based sequencer and sample player plugin with 8 instruments and about 2,500 samples for velocity layers and round robin. Besides a bunch of great presets, Skaka gives you full control over complex humanizer, shuffle, internal awareness of in and out shakes, which sound different, a grid divided into triplets, quintuplets, septuplets, etc., fine-tuning timing, and several sequence lengths. What's unique about this plugin is that its audio engine and sequencer handles samples with a defined musical high point. This makes it possible to control the timing of event in a natural way. With regular sample players, the sample start is at the beginning of the sound wave. This can create problems when you're handling sounds that have a build-up, which needs to be timed correctly, like shaked sounds. That's why each sample in Skaka has a time-tagged musical high point, which makes the sample player react natural to each shake and the patterns musically timed. Overview. The initial view when Skaka is launched shows 12 slots, each containing a sequencer with a set of settings. The different sequencers are started and stopped via MIDI. The letter on the top left corner of each slot shows what MIDI key is used for triggering that sequence, and it responds equally to all octaves. At the bottom left, you have the 3 sync modes for the sequencer. X means that the slot does not sync to the timeline, but it still uses the host tempo. B for beat means that the slot synchronizes to the nearest beat. T for timeline means that the slot synchronizes the sequence to the DAW's timeline. On the top you have your choice of instrument. On the bottom you have the slot factory presets, where you can also export and import custom sequence settings. In the middle here you have an overview of the sequencer, which also takes you to the sequencer of that slot. To the right there's a global factory preset browser and parameters for controlling the output audio. So you have both a reverb with 9 different algorithms and a room simulator with 4 convolution reverbs. Below you have a high shelf filter affecting all slots and the overall output. Now let's dive into the editor view. The editor view is split into 2 parts, the sequencer and the settings. The sequencer is 100% related to when and how notes are played. It's always in time with the host's tempo and is completely independent of other slot sequencers. Instead of just talking about what everything does, I'm gonna add some shakers to this beat and go through what I'm doing. So, first off, when you're in the main view, you could just browse through the global presets and the sequence presets, where you find a lot of patterns in different styles and genres, both simple, complex, and weird. You would most likely find something you like, but for the sake of this, let's start with an empty canvas. So I've added a clip looping a MIDI event on C. So I'll go to the sequencer for the C slot, indicated by the letter C here. So the grid here is by default in 16th notes. But if I wanted something else, like triplets, quadruplets, or any of these, you see the grid below is changing. But I'll stick with 16th notes for now. And let's add some events by clicking. And as you can see now, the events snap to the grid. This is because I have this magnet on, which means the event will snap to the grid. If I turn this off, I can put shaker events wherever. If I turn on the sideways arrow, I can move the events in timing. A little tip here is that if you hold down Alt while dragging, you can fine adjust the parameter. But let's snap that back to the grid and listen. Just leaving it like this sounds okay, but when playing a shaker, it's common that you want to accentuate certain beats more than others. This you do with the velocity, which is the default parameter you view. In Skaka, you have 8 to 9 different velocity layers. On some instruments, you have the additional 9th layer, where you find one-shots, like here on the tambourine, where it's a hit with a hand. When playing percussion that you shake, it's actually the speed of the shake that determines how hard the particles inside the container will hit. So if you want it to sound as natural as possible, you take the tempo and the rhythm into account when adjusting the velocity. If you're working in a slower tempo, you want the events in a lower velocity, but with a higher tempo, you want a higher velocity. On the other hand, you might just want an effect and don't care if it sounds natural. So now I'll raise the velocity on the offbeat notes to accentuate them. In addition to velocity, you have duration, pitch, and gain up here in the corner. With these, you can also adjust each event separately. So if you want your shakes to be shorter, lower this staple, and with this you adjust pitch and gain. A short key to set the parameter back to its default value is double-clicking. Now I realize I don't want an egg, so let's go to this menu here and pick the shaker instrument instead. Below this is a delay parameter controlling if the whole sequence should come slightly early or late. But let's leave this on 0 for the time. Now I want to show you the Humanizer function. Let's open the Humanizer parameters with this pencil. Humanize can be useful if you want your shakes to be played not perfectly. Now here comes a very neat little feature I really enjoy. This smartness parameter will make your higher velocity events less affected by the Humanizer. This can actually create a more human feel than if all events would be humanized. It's like a real musician playing the shaker could be more inclined to hit the hard notes on time than the lower, which could end up a bit late or a bit early, for example. Now next to the Humanize knob, you have the shuffle settings with the amount knob and selection for 8th note shuffle or 16th note shuffle. I'll just add a little bit of shuffle, cause I like it. Oh, I should just mention that here to the left, you see the pitch and duration knobs. Both of these will affect all the events, and the event values you set up here in the sequencer is relative to this value, so they can be combined. This trigger fade will control the fade in and fade out of the entire sequencer when it's triggered by MIDI on and off. So if I raise both of these, you'll hear it fade in when it starts and then fade out when it stops. Pan here feels pretty self-explanatory. You pull the knob to the right, and then this sequence of shakes is pan to the right, and vice versa. Now the slow pass filter is pretty handy when you want your instrument to fit in the mix. Maybe it takes up too much space in the high spectrum, then you can cut some of the top off by lowering this knob. Now, do you remember in the main view you have a reverb? with a bunch of different types, decay and level. And here, this is the send level to that reverb. So send more to the reverb and send less to the reverb. So I'd like a little reverb, I think. Not too much, thank you. And let's keep the gain where it is for now. That's it for me. Thank you for listening and see you next time. Bonus material.